conversation, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor of Fargo is in the house, Tim Mahoney, ladies and gentlemen. And last night's meeting got my attention, and I think it got a lot of people's attention because there was a debate about property tax and where we go with property tax. Mayor, good to have you back on News and Views.
Well, thanks, Joel. It's good to get out here.
You've been the man that's run many a meeting in your life. You've been mayor, not as long as Herschel Laskowitz, but you will be mayor for a long time. Give me your take on last night's meeting.
Well, it's always nice to hear the citizens speak and what their struggles that they're going through, and I don't doubt that many people are going through struggles. We have people in fixed income that do take homestead credit and are using that. The state made a bigger limit on that could happen, but you'd be surprised. We have $130 million that people take on homestead credit, which you wouldn't think. But we have two bubbles in the city of Fargo. We have the young kids, and then we have the older people on fixed income that live in our community. I'm very concerned about them, but they're suffering the same thing we're all suffering right now is with inflation. Things are going up. We're still striving to keep the cost down as much as we can all throughout the community. And yeah, I don't like to increase taxes to take care of this, but I think we're in a course correction that will make it so we're a sustainable revenue source and expense source. 70% of our expenses are personnel. And 40% is safety, is by police and fire. So it's a hard deal. If firemen just stood up last night and they're losing young guys who don't want to stay. They start at $18 an hour. Well, they're not sticking around anymore. Just I want to be a fireman. They need to be a sustainable wage as well. They're away from their family all the time. Our policemen, we're behind them 100% and know the struggles they have. But people have to understand costs do go up, and I have to meet those costs.
Okay. For some of that, I agree, some I disagree. So let's have that conversation. I believe that the whole premise that I mentioned earlier, and I want to say this right to you, that it's a twofer. That when you look at increasing mills, which you had a conversation about last night with the people that you serve, and then you're looking at valuations increasing, it's like a double dip when it comes to taxes, that budgets could include an increase based upon valuations. And I want to give you a chance to answer that.
And that's a good point. And if you look at the county, the valuation has got extremely high. It's over $1 million for a mill. So what happens with the county oftentimes, they can cut their mills because they recognize they have that benefit from increased valuation. City of Fargo is a little bit different. We don't have as big a mill, so we don't get as much oomph from each increase in mill and increase in property taxes. And property taxes are only 40% of our budget as far as revenue goes. So it's not as nice as it'd be like in smaller communities where you're very dependent on your property taxes to pay your budget. I saw that in one of the small communities. They're having that discussion in Lisbon right now. But the problem is that if it doesn't keep with the expenses, that's where you run into issues. We had requests for 66 positions. We gave 22. 15 of them are firefighters. So the issues you have to look at is what do you need and what do you absolutely have to fund. Ben Dow's really struggling getting snowplow drivers. So we're doing everything we can do. We scramble every way we do. For instance, garbage collection. When we went to automatic garbage collection, we cut our workforce in half because one guy on a truck can do that. So we look at efficiencies all through the system to see how can we be more efficient, less costly for the community.
And the other point I would bring into this is the fact that, the whole premise of property taxes is based upon home evaluation. Agreed?
Yeah, and the state says we have to be within 90% of the value of your home. And in the old days, some counties were delayed or whatever, and you got that benefit. Now you finally got nailed in your own place. Yep. But what we've talked to the state about is, hey, you did a 12% property tax relief at one time. Maybe that was too much. But if you look at average property tax increase, at least 5% a year over the last 10 years, if the state would step in and give a 5% tax relief, that would help keep us more even.
Well, and I'm going to say this, Mayor, people don't always trust the assessor. And in Cass County, for example, homes in Oxbow were valued at $400,000. And in the end, they hit you up for $4 million during the diversion. That was theft. That was theft. I'm sorry.
And
but
now,
if you're the Kindred School District, that was money that was left on the table every year, and other people's taxes got raised because the evaluation was wrong because they had the power to have it wrong. I'm sorry, but there was politics there.
There was politics, but they got it right now. And if you look at the Kindred School District, they do have a good assessment, and they are getting the taxes at the right level.
Now, that's just one example, but my point is this. The state of North Dakota has $9 billion $9 billion. When people look at their property tax, they look at the number. They don't look at this number of mills necessarily going to schools unless they get into it deeper. I get that. But the average citizen looks and says, last year my property taxes were $4,000. This year they're going to be $4,800. That's $800. And that isn't the mayor of Fargo's fault. That's valuation going up. But the whole premise of it is based on the state saying you have to be there. They have $9 billion. $9 billion. Wes Filame, who was just in, wanted to know what leadership you and others in Fargo have provided to get the state off their duff to get that money moving.
Every legislative session, we've discussed different issues that could help us out. As you know, the governor liked the income tax relief, which he got, and there was some property tax relief, but it's probably not to the extent we need. And I think the state has to revamp and relook at that, is how can I help the average taxpayer in the state of North Dakota, a homeowner that sits in their home, people on fixed income as well as young people coming up. And to me, I agree with you. As the legacy fund sits there, you take some earnings out of the legacy fund, you could easily help with tax relief.
Right. I mean, what's the biggest part of any property tax bill? Schools.
Schools.
Right?
Yes.
And in the state's constitution, it says that the state will fund 100% of K-12 schools. Right?
Yes.
It's in the state's constitution. Right? How much do they fund? Not 100%.
No.
And they're sitting on $9 billion. That's instant property tax relief.
Yeah.
It's instant property tax relief. And so I'm just looking at it from a sense of you can't ignore the valuations, because what's going to happen if you let a valuation slip one day, you're going to have a really bad day. You know, then you've changed the whole system.
Well, there's
Agreed?
a penalty if you don't stay within 90%. Then you get charged 10% more. Yeah.
Let's say you own that home in Oxbow, and one day you weren't being a cheat, okay?
No.
And one day you woke up and your home went from an evaluation of $400,000 to $4 million, and you didn't know it.
Yes.
Although I think they'd have to be pretty stupid to not realize their home was worth $4 million. But the point I'm trying to get at, and I'm going to keep pounding on, is the legislature in North Dakota has avoided what you're getting in a fight over now in Fargo, which is property taxes, all under the guise of that's not us, that's local. And I believe it's a state issue.
I believe it's a state issue as well, because if we want to continue to attract people to our state, you have to have a favorable tax structure that people can agree with. I think you're doing far better if you do have the state help step in. You know, the Alaska thing where they gave $10,000 to every person, well, that was fine, but it really didn't help long term. Why not structure something which the legacy fund can help us long term?
Okay, people coming in with examples. What about the Fargo Park Board and their $120 million indoor soccer arena? Are there some luxuries they can do without? Other people talking about the expansion, the sales tax that would go into the Fargo Dome, the affordable housing. I mentioned that with the Laskowitz building. You know, there are a lot of big projects out there in Fargo. Should they be there, I guess?
Yeah, and on those issues, we get kind of confused with the Park Board. The Park Board is the one that funded the sports center in South Fargo, and nobody came into their meeting to protest their rate increase. So it's kind of interesting that people get confused a little bit. Park Board really didn't hear a lot from the public saying, hey, we don't want a rate increase. And the other issues on low-income housing, when Laskowitz comes down, we're building 120 more units. We have 3 or 4 projects on the line where we're doing low-income housing and our partner participating in getting low-income housing. So that is happening throughout the city, and we are doing that. The Fargo Dome is a separate issue, so that tax, we've deliberately left that separate. If the people want it, they'll vote for it. If they don't want it, they don't vote for it. It's quarter cent. So I wanted that deliberately separate. If people want to get out here and vote and they feel it's important to them, they're making the choice. It's not a commission or it's not a mayor making that choice.
Ask the mayor why they can't set a budget that falls below the increased dollars coming in due to rising property values. In other words, you know you're going to get the property tax increase because of evaluations. Why can't you budget based on that?
Well, I love that idea. And what has to happen is you also have to think of different ways in which City of Fargo does stuff. So if I rehab your street and do something up out of your street, City of Fargo pays 70 to 80% of that cost. Now, I could cut back on that and go to 50-50. We tried that a couple of years ago, and we had all the neighbors screaming that they did not want to be paying more for their improvements in their neighborhood. So it's kind of a twist and a turn is what you try to do. Again, property taxes are only 40% of my budget. I believe with the franchise fee and the $2 mill increase, we should stabilize the revenue at this point, and then hopefully going forward, we don't do mill increases, and we'll stay within our budget.
I'm going to paraphrase what this text message says. Basically, the point this individual, and I think they're from Western North Dakota, is getting at is they don't want to lose property tax, period, because they believe that's loss whatsoever, completely of any local control. It makes you dependent upon the state, which in certain areas of the state, you're not a priority. And believe me, the state, having served in one of those chairs for 14 years, there's a lot of people don't like Cass County out there.
Yeah, well, state aid to us is $8 to $10 million. Our budget's $120 million, so it's not a big part of our budget, but it does help.
Should it be?
And the prairie dog funding, as you know, came out too. Well, that's $12 million a year, so that is helpful for infrastructure.
What's the total budget of Fargo?
$119 million.
Right. So again, $12 million, helpful, but I think we have to look at this in perspective, right?
No, it's oftentimes local that pays the expenses and what goes on and the person's coming in. I mean, it's what our fees are, what we charge, what we do in a variety of different areas. And we've always been cautious to try to be, what can we best do for the taxpayer? Sometimes you have to look at all your fees and say, well, maybe we should start increasing permits, doing different things. That drives into the housing market. So you have to be careful what you do in one area might affect something in the other area. We are working hard. We do have some homestead credits. We have some heating credits. We have some other people can get. So anybody out there on a fixed income that needs some help, come on in our offices and we'll see what programs we have to help you. But we are deliberately trying to do it as much as possible. But as you know, Joel, competitively right now on getting market salaries, it's hard. It's driven up quite a bit. So not only do you have property values going up, but you also have wages going up. So we are in a turmoil. You just got to keep with inflation.
$20 an hour means $40,000 a year. Yep. That's what it means. It's a basic number. Take whatever times hour times 2,080, right? And that's pre-overtime.
Yep.
So my point is this: a fireman who goes about training as much as they do, who has all that set of skills, are they going to work for $18 an hour, or are they going to find another job? That's a pretty easy one.
Well,
they're not going to go work as a fireman
used to love and family came a fireman, loved being that their whole life. But now we're seeing, that it sometimes gets too much where the wife turns to them and says, God, you're only getting $40,000. It's just not enough to make it for what we have to do. So, no, you have to pay competitive wage, and that's what we're looking at.
And $40,000 when it comes to a fireman isn't competitive.
No.
They have we're going to take a break, see if there's an ad here where somebody's offering more money than that, and they have the same skill set as a fireman.
Yeah, there will be.
There will be. I want to get to some of these text questions. It said apartments are everywhere, Mayor, but not a lot of single-family homes being built to meet the demand. Couldn't you up the building permits for apartment complexes, then lower the building permits to build family homes and or townhomes?
Well, that's a great thing. We had the housing study done, and in the next 10 years, we need 13,000 new places for people to live, either houses or apartment complexes. City of Fargo this year has about 1,000 housing is going to be in apartments. Our housing stock, however, normally is 400 to 450, and we're only at about 150 housing right now. So it tells you people are reluctant with the mortgage rates right now to hop into it. Our fees for our houses are less than our fees for apartments. So when people want to get into that, we try to deliberately keep it low so we can have housing stock. Part of the issue on the housing stock in Fargo right now is because they have put flood-proof basements and the LOMAR has to come to a certain level. That adds about a $20,000-$30,000 cost to any house you build. That should go away when the diversion is done in 26, 27, and that will decrease the cost of housing. Right now, when we did the housing study, an average house is $350,000 to $400,000. That's really hard to make affordable for people. Yeah, we're going to do, from the housing study, we're going to come out with recommendations that come out. Be a national builder in, somebody builds smaller units, townhomes go pretty well, twin homes, those types of models go very well. We are going to look every way. We do want single-family housing in the community. Over the next year, that's going to be a study trying to come up with the best model that makes it work better. Firemen
and women need twice what they are paid. They put their lives in danger all the time. Would you go for that for $18 an hour? They can get that at a fast food place.
We are looking at the firemen in the study right now to do that. So we have Commissioner Kolpak's liaison, and we've come together with HR. We hope to have that studied over the next 6 months and revamp what we pay our firemen.
When will the city quit giving sweetheart deals to the Kilbourne Group to build rental properties that aren't affordable for many?
Well, what happened on most of those deals with any type of tax break that's happened is they pay all the tax breaking properties that we've had pay 5% of your property taxes right now. So a lot of those have gone from $10 million of value up to $400 million of value. That actually has been a payback to the city of Fargo as far as we have increased property taxes coming in for all of us, which help decrease our taxes. In the downtown area, Jim Gilmore did a study, and we found that it reduced taxes for the rest of the population by 4%. It wasn't only Kilbourne. There's other studies that have gone in there that have come up, that different projects that have worked throughout the city that have worked for the benefit of the city and the taxpayer.
Wes brought up the fact that one of the first things he'd cut is out of this budget is the increase in mayor's salary, meaning vis-a-vis the mayor being full-time. Now, I support the mayor being full-time. I mean, yeah. I push back on Wes on that because of the fact that you're already doing full-time work.
Yeah.
Are you going to back off after last night's meeting on that, or are you going to stay firm on that?
Well, I'm still part-time because the commission right now has not gone to a full-time mayor. That's going to still be a discussion in our retreat group is what should the governance model be for the city of Fargo. And basically, Wes has got that done because my wage did not go up. My wages continued at the same rate. So unless the retreat comes out and the commission votes on it, the mayor will continue part-time.
Okay. Mayor, you came in at a minute's notice. This is going to go on. If you were a state legislator, what would you do about this?
I'd look at the legacy fund and property tax relief.
And move some money out where it's needed.
Absolutely.
So people's property taxes wouldn't go up. Mayor Mahoney, good to visit with you.
Good to see you, Joel. Have a great day.